Barry and Nichole Collins have seemingly disappeared from a camping trip without a trace.
And said these two men, Camilleri and Beckett, are quite capable of abduction or kidnapping.
It was a sunny October day in 1997 in the small rural town of Bega, located on the southeast coast of New South Wales, Australia. 14-year-old Lauren Barry and 16-year-old Nichole Collins were enjoying a weekend camping trip with friends near the White Rock campground just outside of town. The two schoolgirls were inseparable, often spending their free time together going to the beach, hanging out with friends, and dreaming about their futures. That Saturday evening, Lauren and Nichole decided to leave the campsite for a bit to go to a party nearby. Lauren was wearing her Bega high school jacket to stay warm in the autumn night air as they headed out around 9 p.m. The girls let their friends know they'd be back in about an hour and set off down the road on foot, laughing and chatting along the way. Little did they know their lives were about to intersect with true evil that night. About 50 kilometers away, in the town of Yass, career criminals Leslie Camilleri, 28, and Lindsay Beckett, 23, were aimlessly driving around in a stolen car, high on drugs and alcohol. Camilleri was out on bail awaiting trial for sexual assault charges relating to his own stepdaughter. He had over 140 prior convictions for offenses like theft and destruction, having grown up abused and spending much of his childhood in teenage imprisonments. Beckett also had a criminal history and was described as having a low IQ and easily falling under the influence of others. As the two men drove along the dark Bega-Tathra road past the turnoff for White Rock around 10 p.m., they spotted Lauren and Nichole walking alone in the night. Acting on a threatening urge, Camilleri pulled over and offered the unsuspecting schoolgirls a ride. After a brief discussion, the girls unconsciously got into the car, unaware that the back doors had been locked so they could not be opened from the inside. Unconsciously to the grave danger they were now in, Lauren and Nichole had no idea the car they stepped into had just become a trap set by violent predators who saw them as easy prey. Once the car took off again down the road into the darkness, the night was about to take a horrific turn. Once the car took off again, Camilleri barked at the girls not to try anything or they'd be attacked, flashing a large sharp knife from the driver's door compartment. Beckett followed suit, pulling out a jagged-edged knife from the glove box and showing it to the terrified girls. "Do as he says," Beckett warned them. Their innocence was now completely at the mercy of these violent criminals. Rather than taking the frightened girls back to the campsite as they deceptively promised, Camilleri instead drove them to a remote rubbish dump off Old Wallagoot Road. There, the abnormal criminals took turns brutally sexually assaulting the crying, shaken young teens. After the horrific attacks at the dump, the nightmare was far from over. Camilleri and Beckett continued driving aimlessly south throughout the night, pulling over to isolated parks and beaches across New South Wales so they could repeatedly rape the helpless schoolgirls again and again. The pair of corrupted predators subjected Lauren and Nichole to unimaginable repeated sexual abuse all through the dark hours, continuing their horrific crimes unchecked across state lines. The next morning, after hours of raping the schoolgirls, Camilleri decided Lauren and Nichole now knew too many details that could implicate the criminals. In his twisted mind, he thought that the only option was to kill the girls to silence them forever. Camilleri ordered Beckett to drown them at a remote location, Fiddler's Green Creek just over the border in Victoria. Beckett briefly protested this horrific command, but the weak-willed Beckett was soon satisfied with Camilleri's order out of fear when the arrogant Camilleri threatened him with a knife. They walked the girls, hands bound, deep into the brush alongside the stream. Camilleri had them stripped naked to wash away evidence, and then lie face down to be tied up again. The men separated the schoolgirls by about 100 feet. Beckett first tried drowning Lauren, but when that didn't work as fast as he wanted, he got angry and hit the 14-year-old repeatedly in the neck and chest until she finally stopped moving. He then ran up and slit 16-year-old Nichole's throat before punching and kicking her. When she didn't die immediately from the knife wounds, the angry Beckett hit her multiple times in the neck and heart until she too laid lifeless and bloody. The evil pair quickly fled back to New South Wales, stopping to burn their clothes and dump their knives in Lake Burley Griffin in Canberra along the way. In the coming weeks, weeks, Camilleri and Beckett went about their lives as if nothing had happened, even as Lauren and Nichole's families desperately searched for them and plastered missing flyers all over town. It wasn't until October 25th that a break came in the case, when Beckett was arrested for car theft in Canberra, and police found maps of Bega in the stolen vehicle. Under questioning, Beckett confessed everything and agreed to take police to the bodies. Camilleri was arrested the next day, but continued insisting he was innocent and that Beckett acted alone. On November 12th, after agonizing weeks of not knowing what happened to their beloved daughters, Lauren and Nichole's distraught, sad families finally got the closure they had been desperately hoping for, yet dreading, when the girls' remains were discovered at the remote stream, discarded exactly as Beckett had left them to rot weeks earlier. Testing of forensic evidence provided further damning proof of Beckett and Camilleri's monstrous crimes. DNA from Beckett's semen was matched to samples found on Lauren's clothes that had been ruthlessly cast aside after her body was violated by the criminals. The heartbreaking discoveries left no doubt about the horrific fate the innocent girls were subjected to. The horrific rapes and murders rocked the small community of Bega to its core. Both men were charged with multiple counts of kidnapping, rape, and murder. Beckett pleaded guilty, and in August 1998 was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum 35-year sentence, the longest ever given in the state of Victoria. Despite overwhelming evidence implicating him, Camilleri continued maintaining his innocence and went to trial in February 1999. Over 10 grueling weeks, the court heard extremely graphic and chilling details of the brutal, prolonged attacks and torture Lauren and Nichole endured at the hands of Camilleri and Beckett that awful night. The jury ultimately saw through Camilleri's lies and crocodile tears, finding him clearly guilty on all counts for his punishable crimes against the girls. The judge subsequently gave Camilleri the harshest punishment possible in Australia for his horrific violations of innocence, sentencing the cruel child rapist and murderer to rot in prison for life with no possibility of parole, forever separated from society for the rest of his days. The maximum sentence ensured this dangerous, sadistic predator would never again have a chance to harm another young life. The nation was shocked by the immense suffering Lauren and Nichole were put through in their final hours at the hands of these evil child rapists and murderers. The random and horrific nature of the crimes terrified Australians, especially parents who worried, "This could happen to my child." The country came together to honor the girls' memories, touched by the young lives so brutally cut short. Scholarships and memorials were set up to remember Lauren and Nichole. The small coastal town they loved never fully recovered from the profound grief and loss of innocence, but their bright spirits, hopes, and dreams would never be forgotten. The nation grieves for the carefree young girls who should have had so much living left to do. It vowed to do better protecting its children so that no others would suffer the same unimaginable fate as Lauren and Nichole.